projects in south side of San Francisco, southeast side of San Francisco. And I remember my Miss Lumber, who was from Beaumont, Texas. And one of the things that stuck in my mind was she said to us, I'm not simply here to make good students. I'm here to make also good citizens. And she must have been clairvoyant in some sort of way, because this was second, third grade for me, 1954, 1955. And something major was happening in the country right there. So she's used the word citizenship here. More than anything else, I want to see young men and women become good, productive citizens. And if they're good, productive citizens, then whatever means in which they make their living, whatever career they choose to make their living by, they'll do well at that. But the key is to be a good citizen. And citizen suggests something else other than just you as an individual. Citizen suggests that there's a community, there's a village, there's a town, there's a city that you're a part of. So it suggests the collective. So just be a good citizen.
Thank you. Mr. Glover, can you say what organizations like this have done for you? In other words, in directing the course that you went on, how important were they to keep you on that course and put you on that course?
Well, I remember one of the things that is interesting, because before I went to the Boys Club, I went to a place which is now a Boys and Girls Club. It was Columbia Boys and Girls Club. A Boys Club. It's Columbia Boys Club, and it was in the Mission District, which is a largely Hispanic area. And one of the things that it did, since I was able to go there with my sister, so it was only three, it was three of us, the first three of us, only 3 years apart. So I remember the kind of fellowship or the camaraderie that I developed with my brother, who was 3 years younger than me, and my sister was 1.5 years younger than I am. The three of us getting on the bus and going somewhere and taking responsibility in getting there. We weren't there. We were of an age of anywhere. I believe I may have been 9, and my sister may have been 6. But the fact that we took care of each other in the journey there, and shared something together, was very important to me in establishing the nature of my relationship with my siblings as well. So that's one thing directly, and just the place to be, a space to be. You know, I mean, a space that took me outside of my world and outside of the particular neighborhood at that particular point in that time. And as always, and remember, I grew up in a neighborhood that when I came to move to the neighborhood as a child, an 11-year-old kid in 1957, when I came to that neighborhood as an 11-year-old kid in 1957, that neighborhood was going through a transition only about less than a decade later. That's the Haight-Ashbury, which is the same neighborhood I've lived in since I was 11 years old. So basically, all the things that have happened in the course of walking and finding ways in which you deal with each other in the community, you deal with your friends, you deal with your adversaries within the community. I found that was the organizations like the Boys and Girls Club provided the platform for me to kind of understand that and find some place. Often conflict mediation is one of the things that happen as well, you know. And in these clubs, remember in the early part of time when we talk about gangs in a different way, we had little clubs. They weren't called gangs, and usually we got into a fight, and it wasn't with weapons. We got into a fight with fisticuffs and everything else. But the fact that even within that framework, there was some means of conflict mediation that I appreciated as well.
Charles Fisher, Source Magazine. The president has commented on the Trayvon Martin situation. And what words of wisdom would you have for the members of the Boys and Girls Club of America and just young people in general about that situation, sir?
Well, I think the nation needs to mourn this, because it's a loss for the nation itself. And certainly it's a testimony of how far we have to go. And understanding how far we have to go is understanding not only what's happening in our own dialogue, but what happens in those who are commentating on this as well. That there's a long way that we have to go and understand that. It is certainly, in some sense, in the sense because we think we've gone further than we think we have, it's a distraction with all the things we have to deal with. the issues that have to happen in our community, the issues around schools, the issues around real nurturing. We have to find another way in which we transform our relationship with each other as human beings. That's basically it. We have to find a way where we begin to embrace each other in a way that, as Dr. King would say, we are our brothers and sisters keepers. And that's basically it. And we haven't found that. Here we are, a tenth of the way through more than a tenth of the way through the 21st century, and we haven't found that. And you know, and a victim of that, and perhaps a victim of all the work that we all should be doing, is Trayvon Martin.
2 more questions.
Mr. Glover?
Yeah.
What kind of advice or insight can you give to the parents and the leaders like yourself, actors, philanthropists, so that we can build and move forward as a community?
Well, I'm not going to pretend that I have answers, you know, because the incredible thing that's powerful about who we are as human beings is that we find the best in ourselves through the challenges that we have. And if we understand that there's a challenge that we have to overcome, and that challenge is going to determine or shift perhaps how we see ourselves, then we'll come to our task and do the things that we need to do. Of course, there's so many things that I can talk about. We can isolate this particular incident right here that happened to this young boy, but we can't isolate all the things, historical things that associate with what happened to him at that particular moment. And it's important for us not to isolate that, and to understand that we can understand that there's a way in which we have to connect all the dots and put all the dots together. And all those dots suggest that we're not doing the work that we need to do as human beings. And I underline that because it's all of us as human beings. Because once I say human beings, then no one's excluded from the process. Whatever the outcome is, no one's excluded from the process.
Thank you.
Mr. Glover?
Yeah.
John Warparian, Beyond the Game. There's so much retrenchment with regards to support for organizations like the Boys and Girls Club of America. At least there are some voices in the political spectrum calling for slow things down, cut. Are you thinking perhaps, is there any inspiration of jumping into the electoral fray and becoming a candidate?
Good question.
My senator here, my state senator. No, I think change, as we all understand, happens from the outside. You know, and it's always the outside pushing the inside, what's happening on the inside. And I think that we need to have more voices on the outside. The more voices we have on the outside certainly will be a determinant in where we go and how we move forward. Just as important, you know, to have those voices on the outside. And I'm certainly, you know, I got an 8-year-old grandson, and I'm certainly going to be on the outside, because when I think about that 8-year-old boy, I'm thinking about what he's going to have to encounter. How do I prepare him? But as I say, he's not simply my 8-year-old grandson, or he's all of our 8-year-old grandson. All of us. All of us.
Okay, we're going to do a quick photo session and then we'll be done.